Hi, I'm Sam. Welcome to my channel. And that photo is me as a little boy. So I want to talk about what feels like a miracle that's happened over the last couple of weeks, and do my best to make sense of that and share it in any way that will be useful for other people. I have a couple of poems to read, if I can fit them in. So there might be some background noise because it's very early and I'm on a hillside high above the village, and so everybody's waking up and I can hear dogs barking, and I was kind of bursting to make this video, so I didn't want to go too far, so I just woke up and had a coffee and just hiked up here. And yeah, I think healing is such an abstract concept, and I know there are lots of people that watch my videos that are in the midst of almost unbearable pain. It is unbearable, so they avoid it. We avoid it. We use coping strategies and methods, avoidance, and little behaviours that we just normalise over time, and we forget that they're coping strategies. So, healing is just this unknown foreign land that, for me, I trusted that it was real, I think. I didn't really hope that I would heal, but I trusted that whatever happens to me during my time here has purpose and meaning, and whatever we are experiencing is the spiritual work before us. So our lives are spiritual journeys, and so if we experience suffering and pain, that is the spiritual work, how we overcome that. And so I trusted that was true. I trusted that was true, and I trusted that at some point I would arrive at a place of clarity. I never imagined that I would ever be free of how the pain and the trauma I experienced throughout my childhood and throughout my life as I repeated it. I never imagined that I would ever be free from that. And I think it's important to say that, as I've said before, we are always arriving. And if you have a breakthrough in your healing process and you arrive somewhere, you say, this is it, I'm here. And as that slips away, the feeling of being bereft, crestfallen, can set us back. So it's important to just acknowledge breakthroughs and not grasp or hold on to feelings of freedom and healing, and that feeling of, okay, I'm here, I've arrived, it's over. It's never over, it's a lifetime. It's part of what we do here during our time. It's constant evolution, constant change, growth, from chaos to harmony, from dark to light, from shadow to light, I think. And so it's important not to hold on too tightly to those breakthroughs, because they will slip away, they will change, and healing just ebbs and flows. It's remaining in equilibrium, in equanimity throughout those peaks and troughs that really is the spiritual work. And when you get to a place of equanimity, you're no longer riding that crest as it rises and crashing into the trough as it falls. It's just feeling. It comes and it goes. So for me, I think healing is severing the attachment to the controlling element of whatever happened to us. And then it just falls into the background. And so it's just part of our history. So, you know, what happened over the last couple of weeks was a miracle, really. And, you know, it's only a few days ago that I reached a point of profound change. And so, you know, the work I've been doing for the last 6 months with a healer, somebody who knows darkness, who knows suffering and trauma, and has worked on themselves for 30 plus years through various methods, and they've formulated their own approach to helping other people. And I asked them if it was okay if I shared their website. It's a public website, but I thought it was appropriate to ask. And so I will link that below. So it's not for everybody because it's very challenging work, and you have to be ready for it. And if you are in full-time education or full-time employment, I think you'll find it difficult because you fall apart. In the sessions, a mirror is held up gently and with love so that I can see how I am my own abuser. And I took on the role of my own abuser from before I can even remember. And I just perpetuated that abuse. And to see that is very difficult. And there is a resistance from me in those sessions because I don't want to see it. I don't want to acknowledge that I'm my own abuser. And then we have various exercises that we do, written and spoken, and physical exercises. And I can see in the tiniest detail of my thoughts in every moment of my life how I embodied what happened to me, how I embodied the abuse that I experienced as a kid. I embodied that, I became that. And that is very, very painful. And when you can see it, it's extremely destabilizing. And so after every session, I fall apart for maybe about a week. And then when I reform and pull myself together, those fragmented pieces aren't so fragmented. There is a feeling of increasing wholeness, peace, clarity. But, you know, I had to reach a point in my life where I literally had nothing left. I'm in my early 50s and I'd been fighting my whole life. And I didn't even realise that. I didn't even realise how cruel I was to myself because I just normalised it. And because it's all I ever knew as a kid. And I reached a point where I literally had nothing left. All the structures in my life that I'd built to protect me had fallen apart. My identity had fallen apart and I had nothing left but the pain. And, you know, so I haven't worked for 3 years because I just basically just completely fell apart. And I haven't claimed any government benefits either, so I've had to sell every single thing I owned, apart from a small amount of money I kept aside. And when I got to the point in January where I had nothing left apart from that small emergency fund, that was the point really that brought me to a place where I made a choice to change because I knew I had to. So we don't really do this until we have to, because you hold on and hold on and hold on to the identity that you build to protect you. But that identity is wrapped around the trauma. And so you are reliving the trauma in every thought, in every moment of your life, because that's why you exist that's why your identity exists. So you have to get to the place where you've got to start deconstructing that. Otherwise you're never going to be free. And you literally have to become different, a different person. Same but different. You have to change. And so, when I look at my life, I was looking for stability. And because I grew up in chaos and terror and emotional abuse and neglect, awful neglect, the only stability I could find was in my own identity. The only certainty I could find was in my own identity. And that's when the problems start, because you start to isolate yourself in a world of your own creation, and that world is self. And then you become isolated throughout your life, because the self is the citadel of your own self-protection. It's where you live. It's the certainty of your identity, and that's where you get that rigid, egoic structure that in its most extreme forms is narcissism. And it's always rooted in trauma. So all of that has to break apart. All of it. And that's what's been happening to me. So, what happened over the last few weeks, I usually only have one session a month because that's all I can handle. That's all I can afford as well. But I had 2 sessions last month, and I won't do that again because it was very, very difficult, and I really fell apart. And I reached a point where something happened that triggered the self-hate, and I felt an invitation inside my own being to turn violence against myself, habitual violence in my self-talk and physically. And I started to do that, and then I stopped. And I said to myself, this is a choice. This is a choice. I am not going to be my own abuser anymore. I am not going to turn that violence against myself anymore. And it's my choice. And I stopped. And the next day I had a similar choice. Slightly different form of violence, but still violence against self. And I chose again to stop. And that night, my dreams were transformed. My dreams have been a very, very disturbing place to be for my whole life. I went through many, many years of waking up, screaming, struggling to wakefulness just so I could escape my dreams. Many years doing that. To the point where, God, for decades, I dreaded going to sleep because I knew that there would be some kind of disturbing scenario in which I was corrupt and shamed and desperately trying to escape. And so I dreaded sleep for years. But that night, when I made the second choice, I didn't. In my dreams, a similar scenario that usually happens took place, but I changed. In the dream, I said, no, I'm not going to participate in this. I'm just going to go and sit over there in the corner. Tell me where to sit and I'll just go over there so I'm not in your way, and I'll just go and sit down. And I just sat down and didn't participate, and I didn't play a part in the dream, and I took control. I took control. And I woke up the next morning, and as soon as I woke up, I just started sobbing. I started crying because I remembered something. I just remembered something. And that little boy in the photo at the start of the video, I felt him again. And he has been inside me, deep inside a well of grief that he could not escape, carried separately, never integrated. I did not want to feel what I felt as a boy, how terrified I was, how alone I was, how confused I was. Why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? It must be my fault. It must be. And so I carried all of that all my life, carried that boy. And when I cried those tears from the core of the wound, the center of the wound, it purges the emotion, that dark center that controls us, and it cleanses the wound, cleanses it. And I just woke up and I cried, and I cried. And I brought that little boy, the boy that I was, into now. And I know I've said similar things to this before, but they're just words. And those words are instinctual, so we know what we need to do. But the actual physical, metaphysical process of releasing whatever's held inside and feeling it and crying those real tears, just for a few minutes, releases decades of suffering. And it's a choice. Can we find the strength to change, to release ourselves from being our own abuser? As the trauma is relived in every moment of our lives, behind every thought, even though you can't see it, it's there. So we need to release ourselves. We need to change, to sever that attachment to the controlling aspect of whatever happened. And it's claiming our lives back, it's taking our lives back. And I do have a choice. I do have a choice in every moment of my life. But I think we have to get to the point of complete breakdown before we can start to make those choices. And in the last session, I said to the lady who helps me, I said to her, something's changed. And I feel a resignation. I've just accepted the fact I'm fucking broken. I've just accepted the fact I'm broken. And I've got a million different crazy things that I do every day to just find stability, to create order and stability. And I said, I just accept it. I'm not fighting it anymore. And she said, I'll give you a different word. Surrender. Not resignation, surrender. So what do we surrender? We surrender the fight. We surrender the fight. And that's when life begins. And because surrendering the fight is surrendering the identity that is fighting. It's accepting. And acceptance is the beginning of forgiveness. When I look at the last few months, last 50 years, I was in the immediacy of every moment of my life. I was reliving what happened to me. And it was like, it was this crystal clear, immediate kind of pain that was completely in the way of feeling each moment. You know, and I don't feel that anymore. I feel like I'm here. You know, and that's another thing I've been saying for a long time. I am here. But that's, you know, like I said, those are just words. They're just words. And they're the beginning of actually feeling, oh, okay, something's changing. Something's changing. And that's healing. And so I look back on my life. Everything I did to try and escape myself, transition. You know, I had no idea why I transitioned. I knew I wanted to escape. But I don't anymore. You know, I know that when I see that photo of myself as a boy, I don't feel this unbearable sorrow. I don't feel the desperate loneliness of those years and my life, really, as I isolated myself. I don't feel that anymore. So for the impossible to happen, and it does feel impossible to actually heal and change, for the impossible to happen, you know, we have to accept a miracle, really, that, you know, our life is a gift. It is a miracle. And it's our choice whether we claim that life. And, you know, try and find forgiveness. I'm going to read a poem. I've read this poem before, as I've read most of them before, but this poem is like almost written for those of us that have lived with complex trauma and had our lives defined by what happened to us as kids and then relived it all through our lives. So this is the poem for us. It's David Whyte from Still Possible, and it's the edge you carry with you. What is this beguiling reluctance to be happy? This quickness in turning away the moment you might arrive? The felt sense that a moment's unguarded joy might after all just kill you? You know so very well the edge of darkness you have always carried with you. You know so very well your childhood legacy, that particular inherited sense of hurt given to you so freely by the world you entered. And you know too well by now the body's hesitation at the invitation to undo everything others seem to want to make you learn. But your edge of darkness has always made its own definition secretly as an edge of light. And the door you closed might, by its very nature, be one just waiting to be leant against and opened. And happiness might just be a single step away on the other side of that next unhelpful and undeserving thought. Your way home now, understood not as an achievement, but as a giving up. A blessed undoing, an arrival in the body, and a full rest in the give and take of the breath. This living, breathing body, always waiting to greet you at the door. Always, no matter the long years you've been away, still wanting you to come home. And that's what it feels like, coming home. And it kind of doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore what happened. It doesn't matter how I lived, for all of my life, abusing drugs and alcohol and hurting myself over and over and over again. It doesn't matter. Because the now really is all we have. And when you are here now, the now is everything. So who are we now? Not who we've been, or where we've been, or what we've experienced. Who are we now? Do we love ourselves? Do we accept ourselves? Do we forgive ourselves? Do we forgive the past? Because until you forgive the past, until you accept it and forgive it, you're never going to be here. You're never going to be here. Some things are seemingly unforgivable. But if you can't forgive them, you can accept them. And that's the beginning of releasing yourself into the now. And then you're here. And I do think that those of us that have been deeply, repetitively wounded are only given that task, are only given that work because we can handle it. We can handle it. And that's why we're here to do that work. Because if we can transmute our own suffering into presence, into compassion, that's our gift that we bring into the world. And so we're not given anything we can't handle. So maybe it's easier for us to look at the trauma as a task of transformation. We then can bring that compassion that we find into the world for other people. And God knows we need that. So, I'm going to end with a poem. I'm not going to read the whole poem because it's very long. I'm just going to read the last few verses. And this is David Whyte again, of course. And this is from Essentials. And it's The Faces at Braga. If only your own faces would allow the invisible carver's hand to bring the deep grain of love to the surface. If only we knew, as the carver knew, how the flaws in the wood led his searching chisel to the very core, we would smile too, and not need faces immobilized by fear and the weight of things undone. When we fight with our failings, we ignore the entrance to the shrine itself and wrestle with the guardian, fierce figure on the side of good. And as we fight, our eyes are hooded with grief, and our mouths are dry with pain. If only we could give ourselves to the blows of the carver's hands, the lines in our face would be the trace lines of rivers feeding the sea, where voices meet, praising the features of the mountain and the cloud and the sky. Our faces would fall away until we, growing younger toward death every day, would gather all our flaws in celebration to merge with them perfectly, impossibly, wedded to our essence, full of silence from the carver's hands. I'm going to read that again, actually. That's so good. I mean, think about what this says. If only we knew, as the carver knew, how the flaws in the wood led his searching chisel to the very core. We are made for this. We are made for this. So all the pain, all the trauma we've experienced, we are made for this. We are made to transmute this and change it into something good. The carver knows this. If only we knew, as the carver knew, how the flaws in the wood led his searching chisel to the very core, we would smile too, and not need faces immobilized by fear and the weight of things undone. When we fight with our failings, we ignore the entrance to the shrine itself and wrestle with the guardian, fierce figure on the side of good. And as we fight, our eyes are hooded with grief and our mouths are dry with pain. If only we could give ourselves to the blows of the carver's hands, the lines in our faces would be the trace lines of rivers feeding the sea. Surrender. The lines in our faces would be the trace lines of rivers feeding the sea, where voices meet, praising the features of the mountain and the cloud and the sky. Our faces would fall away until we, growing younger toward death every day, would gather all our flaws in celebration to merge with them perfectly, impossibly, wedded to our essence, full of silence from the carver's hands. Growing younger toward death every day. Innocence. The return to innocence. The return to what was stolen. Never really taken. Just crushed for a time. That's what it is about, I think, for me. A return to innocence. The innocence that we have when we enter whatever this place is. The mystery. So, I'll say again, never give up until you have to. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.